Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to Women in Wealth with Esther Szabo from Gates Past Advisors. Esther, how are you this morning?
I'm doing really well, Eric. It's here. It is the Monday after Thanksgiving holiday, and I love Thanksgiving. It's just so nice to have that long break and to have that nurturing time with friends and with family over fabulous. I'm blessed to be able to have a fabulous meal.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the things that you had said before we even hit the record button was this is one of the only times it's truly a 4-day weekend. And I don't know about all the listeners out there, but I need at least Friday and Saturday to recover from the mass quantities of food on Thursday. And then Sunday is just a nice day to relax.
Right. Oh, it's lovely. So I feel very, very fortunate this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we talking about today?
Well, since we were just talking about Thanksgiving, it is the holiday season when this comes out. It'll be in full swing. And as you know, my practice focuses on women going through times of transition, whether it is change that people look forward to all their lives, often like retirement, or maybe they've received a windfall of an inheritance and navigating how to create a new life with this. Or it's other times where there is loss. There is loss of a spouse, even a pet, or another family member, a parent or child. And it can be very, very difficult going through the holidays. And what we're talking about is navigating loss during the holidays today.
All right. This is a tough one. I think that everybody's experienced this in one way or another, maybe small, maybe more of a distant relative. But for those that have experienced a loss that's very, very close, like I know that you have, boy, this can be a really, really tough time, especially when it's very new.
Absolutely, it can, and when there's so many expectations on us. And so I'm going to start with quoting from a neuropsychologist who's a leading practitioner in the field of financial psychology and financial change. Her name is Dr. Morris Summers. She is such an extremely valuable resource regarding the science behind the work that I do one-on-one with clients, supporting them as they navigate these life transitions to make healthy financial decisions. And her approach is that mental energy is a renewing resource. It is limited, but the good news is it can be renewed each day by things that we do, like eating and sleeping. And I guess there's some debate within the field of neuropsychology whether it's limited or not, but her approach is it is limited because the energy is drawn down by the tasks of daily living. And during the holiday season, we all know that typically demands on our time increase. And even though the brain is renewed by rest, healthy food, exercise, if one is going through the holidays and then also going through the holidays without a loved one, the management of that pain and that stress and those emotions can really pull on our mental energy and bring us down. So rather than just speak of my own experience or the scientific knowledge, I actually polled clients because given the nature of my practice, many of my clients have been through challenging loss. And I asked them, they've lost a spouse or a parent or a child or a marriage. I asked them for their input on what worked for them going through the holidays during difficult emotional times. And I'm going to go through our top 7 tips of how to go through the holidays, maintaining your well-being as best as you can.
Wow. First of all, thank you. And thank you to all your clients who participated in this, because it's a very personal issue, but so vitally important. So thank you for doing this and presenting this.
Yeah, it was, I was actually a little reticent to ask, because even I was thinking, well, I don't want to bring up a difficult, painful thing, even though one of my premises is that we have to talk about these. At least in my office, I want it to be a safe place to talk about this. I know how important it is to be able to let it out and to say what's going on. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm really aware that people come to me to make financial decisions and to have clarity. And if this is going on, it really impedes the ability to make good financial decisions. So I'm encouraging of sharing it, but I noticed I was reticent to trouble them. But each of them was extremely responsive and right away got back.
That's fantastic.
So the first thing that was really common was, as a tip, to think ahead. Just about everyone agreed that planning ahead is important. What is the plan for the holidays? What is one thinking that they're going to be doing? Who will they be sharing it with? And a big comment was to reduce commitments. Many of us are overcommitted 7 days a week, as it is. And then, of course, there's more things that come up during the holidays. So to really look ahead and say, well, what can I take out of my schedule? And often as women, it's just built into us. We tend to be focused on others. What would make others feel comfortable? So it can feel really awkward to sit down by ourselves with a cup of tea, 20 minutes, and just to allow that time to consider what would feel best for me. It feels really selfish. It feels really self-centered, because we're worried that we'll hurt somebody by saying no or no thank you. But it can mean the difference, again, going back to this mental energy and replenishing and getting the rest that we need. So it might be thinking what commitments and appointments could come off the plate. And I've been asked this recently too. Will the world stop if you don't make that Zoom event?
Yeah.
And we can sense that, oh my gosh, I've said yes to this. Oh my God, I have to do this. And if one really steps back and says, well, what's going to happen if I don't go? What really will be the trouble? And I like to consider, if I do get overextended, what is the impact on me? On my family, that fatigue. I remember when my husband passed away, my late husband passed away, it was amazing to me how exhausting the grief process was. And how much a roller coaster it was. One moment I was okay, and then I was really not okay. And if I had too much stuff on my plate and got overtired, it made the dip of that roller coaster, it made it so much harder to come up the other side. So there's a real serious impact of getting overextended, because we need that bucket, basically, of mental energy. We need it to be pretty full to also navigate that grief. And if it gets too empty, it makes it very, very difficult to complete the tasks that we need to keep us healthy. And chances are, if you're overtired, you're going to skip the holiday party or the Zoom event anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to push yourself to show up. And that's not what's needed right now.
Yeah. I think it's so important to understand that you are not obligated, right? That the people feel that way. They feel like they're obligated to do these things. And if they just take a moment to think, will people understand if I don't go? Will people understand if I take this time to just have some personal time? Of course they will. And unfortunately, there may be some people that, oh, I'm so sad that you didn't show up, or I'm so disappointed that you didn't show up. That's too bad. I'm sorry. It's more important to be stable in your own environment, in your own self. This just happened this weekend. We had a friend of ours who she has severe anxiety, and she went to a funeral on Saturday of one of her son's friend's moms. She had passed away. And she's experienced a lot of loss in her life, and especially around this time. It was this Thanksgiving weekend. She had a tremendous panic attack, and we talked to her seriously about you don't owe anyone. You don't have to go to a funeral. If that's a trigger for you, you don't have to do that. And if being around a lot of other people at a party is just too soon for you because there's so many couples there, or there's so many, kids there, or whatever you've lost in that moment, you don't owe anybody that time to be there. You owe yourself that time to heal. And I think that the obligation part of things is what trips people up, and you're not obligated for any of that.
Right, exactly. And people are very understanding. And it's a way, especially if we're strong women who tend to handle a lot of things, we assume that there's an expectation that we have to meet. Mm-hmm. And you're right, we really don't. The people are very understanding. And that was something that was talked about a lot, which was of the close friends that you have, the people that you really appreciate and enjoy and who really understand you. Those are the connections to really prioritize during the holidays. Who do you feel most safe and most comfortable with? Who really understand what you're dealing with? And you may want to write their names down. Even seeing the list can remind us we're not alone. And let the friends know you may need to call on them for help and to check ahead. Would it be okay to call on them last minute? Would it be okay to cancel last minute? And that also can feel very hard to do. It'll ask of us, often, seen as strong women, to let someone know we may not have it all together. And that can be a very difficult thing to admit, even though nobody is expecting us to. It's our expectation of ourselves.
Exactly.
And this thing that you mentioned about obligations and canceling or saying I can't attend or not attending, if somebody came to us and said in advance, I may need to cancel on you because it's a difficult time, would that be okay with you? If someone came to me and said that, having gone through what I've gone through, I would really appreciate that they're letting me know ahead that it may happen, and we can talk about it. And I could say, well, no, that's not a problem at all. Or I could say, gosh, it would be good to know if it's possible, like the night before or something like that. And if you can't, you can't. The thing is that often we're going to do it. We may end up canceling anyway. So it's kinder to let, and more thoughtful of the other person, actually, to let them know that you might need to cancel. That just might be part of it. And even just letting them know, I may not want to talk about the event that I'm dealing with. These are also suggestions from clients. Just let them know, may not want to talk about what I'm dealing with. I may just need to connect, hang out a bit, listen to what's going on for you. My emotions are shifting a lot. I've never been through this before. That's a really good thing to share. How many of us have been through difficult losses? And maybe, each relationship that's lost or changed, you've never lost that person before. And it's really okay to be a newcomer at this. I haven't dealt with this before, so I'm not sure what I'll be up for. And one of the things that Dr. Mora notes that about mental energy, it goes towards one of the areas that it goes to. I have a great offer at the end for this little booklet that she created of where your mental energy goes. And one of the areas is towards controlling emotional displays. And if we're going through a tough time, we're not, and if we're in public, or like you said, at that memorial event, for somebody who's having a hard time with it, it may be just too much energy to try and control themselves in it, to control the feeling of anxiety. It just may be too much, and that's okay. And that's what I hear that you shared with her. It's okay. Take care of yourself. people are understanding. And if they're not, oh, well.
Yeah.
Your feet are on this planet right now. We've got to make sure that you're okay in this life. And the safe people that we have, they'll allow us to cry if we feel sad, and that if we don't have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some places where we go, I don't have the energy to control what's going on with me, and I'd rather do it in private, and that's fine too. But be aware that that is one of the places that can build up fatigue if we're trying so hard to control and to project that we have it all together when we don't, understandably.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really loved what one client shared. That is, if you cannot do all the things you normally do for the holidays, decorating, cooking, baking, gift buying, wrapping, let yourself off the hook.
Yes.
Which again comes back to this acceptance and reducing of expectation. It's really okay. The planet will not fall apart if the perfect gift wrap isn't on the present, if there is no present, if there aren't cards sent out. It's really okay.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. Is this something that you feel like people should be open to allowing other people to help them? Like, I'm terrible at wrapping gifts. I'm terrible at wrapping gifts. So I won't help with that because it would be embarrassing. But I mean, if somebody doesn't have the energy to go out and hang the lights, put the normal, blow up things in their yard or whatever, is it okay for other people to come over and help? And I know that's just a silly question because of course it's okay, but somebody who's going through that, should they put it out there and say, hey, I could use some help, or should they wait till people offer? What do you think?
No, I think it's great. I think that's a great suggestion. And that's so funny. I wonder if because I work so much with very strong, independent women, because that did not come up as one of the suggestions. That's so funny. And I didn't think of it either, but it's great. If I often think that accessing resources is so important because people don't know what to do. They don't know what to do really when you're going through loss. And they so love it if you say, yes, I could use your help with this. I remember a couple things when I lost my late husband, and it was really time for a new TV. In fact, I'd been teased about our TV we both had for years because it wasn't a flat panel, and it was 2014. It was still had the big back on it. Mm-hmm. And I was told, oh, you're going to love the picture. And I'm like, this picture's fine. What's wrong? Yeah. And I don't know about electronics. I didn't know about how to set up a new TV. And, I know it's a panel. It's got to sit on something. And what do you do about that? And my best friend's husband took a day with me and set up this television, came down. They live out of town, and just set the whole thing up, got me all set. And it was such a wonderful thing because when you are going through tough times, sometimes television is too much of an escape. I know that, but sometimes it's just so cozy. And they were absolutely right. The picture was a lot better.
What do you mean they hang on the wall? What? I can't imagine one of those big square ones bolted to your wall. So yeah. Yeah.
And even just using resources that are there, people to services where people will hang up lights, et cetera. I mean, Of course, you want to use something that you're comfortable with. That was the thing for me. I didn't want really strangers around my house. So that can be a thing. But if you know a friend who's used one, because it can be very uplifting also to have those lights up, to have those beautiful things around that you look at, it can be very uplifting. Mm-hmm. That's a great suggestion, Eric. I'll have to include that.
I mean, just as you were saying that, I was thinking, if you normally put up Christmas lights, I think you want more of those things that are normal to happen, right? Because you can come back to your house after you go out to a friend's house or whatever, and it's dark and there's no lights up, and that's not normal. And there's almost another loss there. I don't have my decorations. I don't have this. I don't have that. And so having those small things, I think, could be just a little uplifting, right? You pull back into your house and look how pretty it looks. It's nice. Right. It's ready for Christmas, or it's ready for whatever. So,
yeah. it's true. It's like another feeling of, oh, things are different now.
Yeah.
I don't have this if you don't. So I love that. That's wonderful. In terms of keeping busy and doing things, several said it's really good to actually keep busy, but not at work. And as I said in my own planning in the months after I lost my late husband, I needed the extra downtime to process and allow the feelings. And I also needed to plan in time with other people outside of work. So one of the things was, it really kept me grounded to connect with others and kept me in the land of the living, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the suggestions was to do fun things that you enjoy with others. And perhaps during times of loss, fun can be too high of an expectation of ourselves, but to consider what are the things that you enjoy doing. I've shared that I have a hobby and it's paper crafting, it's making cards, sending cards. And November was a pretty tough time for me emotionally. It was just some challenging things came up, and it's also exhausting. And I was working through that, but I wasn't doing my hobby. And I had an opportunity to sit down, and I said, okay, I'm going to do my hobby. But I was kind of like, I don't know if I felt kind of blah. I'm not really into this, but thank goodness for video, because watching YouTube, I got inspired and I ended up playing for several hours and my mood was so lifted. And it's one of the reasons I love the hobby in the first place. And then it does turn me into doing things for others, which clients also suggested. Do something for others in need, whether it's a friend, a family member, a stranger. It just really helped them to do that because it took the focus off their own challenges and provided that mental rest. So it felt really good to send out these cards, and I had little gifts it was Thanksgiving-ish time, and to give the little gifts out and experience the warmth of appreciation coming back to me. That felt really rewarding.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great.
And remembrance of our loved ones. This is, if you're keeping track, I think this is tip number 5. And remembering our loved ones. One client said that each year a family member organizes a hike in her dad's name, and all the family members are invited. And actually, this family member is the dad's second wife, and she invites my client's mom along, who was the first wife, because it's so important to be inclusive, and it's an opportunity to be outside, to connect as a family and share in something that he really enjoyed doing. I loved that idea because being outside can also be really healing and really nurturing for the mind. Just as I've heard this term more recently, but these nature baths. And even if you live in a more urban area, there'll be trees around. There's a sky there, there's sun there, there's wind, there's weather. And just going out to experience what hopefully is fresh air and look up at the light is very, very nurturing. And further, at Christmas, they set a place for their dad at the dinner table. They acknowledged that he's not there, but it's also remembering him. And I really appreciate that it allows that, yes, there is a loss here. We don't have to brush this under the rug. There is a loss. There is someone significant that's not here, and gives us space to acknowledge them.
Yeah.
And another is people light candles in remembrance, and they create a space, maybe with that person's picture, maybe a vase with a flower, maybe some keepsakes, just a space for you to say hello and connect with them quietly. Even if it feels sad, it will feel sad. That's normal.
Yeah.
But it says, hey, I'm remembering you. You meant so much to me. You still do. I haven't forgotten.
Yeah. And I think that if you're listening to this and you've experienced a loss, especially when it's a parent and you have siblings, one thing that struck me, Esther, when my grandfather passed, I was sad, but I didn't have a tremendous connection with him. I didn't grow up near him and so on and so forth. But my mom has 3 siblings, and to see each of them and the different levels of grief they each felt when he passed was very eye-opening to me, even as an adult, to see how all 4 of them were so different. And thinking of a sibling or another family member who has experienced the same loss as you, but in just a different way, possibly. So you may not need that space at the dinner table to acknowledge that dad is, has that space or that remembrance or that candle, but just remember that somebody else might. Somebody else, it may be very important for them to have that acknowledgement or that space.
Yeah, I appreciate that because it brings up the fact that people do grieve differently. People do have different relationships. Some people do want something more outward. Some others don't. And just allowing that space for respect of what works for each of us is, and to observe that is so important.
So what else did your clients have to say?
Well, one said, it's so important to know what doesn't work for you. She shared that she avoids the commercials, the social media that all portray these perfect family gatherings that are so fabulous and everyone's so happy or touched or connected. And they're really hard because they can trigger the feeling that I'm alone. I'm not like this. I'm different.
Yeah.
And so one of the things she said is she kind of celebrates on December 26th when she knows that those will be gone because they are still very triggering. She's lost both of her parents and she loved them both very, very much. And she's still connected with her siblings, but it is just different.
Yeah.
So large gatherings themselves, these pictures of large gatherings that show up on social media or in commercials, as we talked about earlier, and you shared about your friend, they may not work. I found it very hard to go to large gatherings. It was just too much. It was too many people, too much. It was sensory overload. I could not navigate all of that. And there were a few instances where I found myself there. I thought I could do it. I thought, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. And when I was in the middle of it, I was like, I am not okay.
Yeah.
And they were probably some of the most difficult times throughout that period. So I'm really recommending to just acknowledge that these large gatherings, I think even on Zoom, would not work either.
Yeah. And again, that word obligation comes up. If you're there and then it becomes overwhelming, you're not obligated to stay.
Right.
It's okay to leave. It's okay to say your goodbyes. Thank you so much, but I need to go ahead and get home now. And the people that you're gathering with, the ones that you're close with, the reason you're there, they'll understand. And if other people are there that just don't, that's okay. Leave them behind.
Yeah. And so few people noticed. I remember what I really should have done, and this is a tip also in the final tip, but if you are going to go, take a good friend with you. Take somebody who does get what you're going through with you, because you can often take a guest. And I should have done that. And honestly, I thought, I'm okay. I'll be okay. And I remember leaving and I did not even make it to the lobby of this thing before I completely burst into tears. And I was driving away and I called my best friend and she was like, pull the car over right now. Don't drive. And she just talked with me until I was more settled. But it was a very, very painful experience.
Yeah.
And so it's good to know what doesn't work for you. It's okay. I think that's a theme throughout. It's okay. There's space for things not to work right now. That it's okay that there's a change and a shift, and just to take really good care of yourself. And the last tip that clients several recommended was a trip. As their way of coping. Yeah, which wouldn't have occurred to me because I love travel, but I am such my home base was so nurturing to me during my darkest days. But many said getting out of that normal routine and getting away where perhaps getting away from the fact that the house was dark or things weren't the same really helped them. It was enough that one said it was not the perfect trip. Don't expect it to be the perfect trip. It was really challenging, but it was good to be away. That was their way. They got through their first holiday without their child who had passed. And it was recommended, though, to not go alone. If you're a single, to not go alone on a trip, that could feel really triggering towards loneliness and aloneness. You'll see other people out and about on holiday, and that can be triggering, that I'm different, I'm not the same. So it was recommended either to go with someone or to someone to get away and to just take that break. And years ago, I spent the Christmas holiday overseas in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe. I was visiting my dad at the time, and I hadn't seen him for many years. And I went to spend the holiday with him. And it was a really great holiday because it is different outside of the U.S. There, at least at that time, the holiday was basically, sure, you have a nice meal, you maybe exchange one gift, receive one gift. It's a simple experience. It's not that different than Thanksgiving is here. There is absolutely the religious aspect, but it's so much simpler. And I loved coming back to the U.S. after New Year's, and it was all done, and it was just so much more peaceful. So I can see where that could really be helpful for people to be away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the common theme was really to allow time to consider what works for you, what doesn't, to plan ahead, to either postpone or completely eliminate the obligations that really are not fitting for you at this time, to let people know who are those good people in your life that brighten your life. One even said just really even practicing gratitude for those things does really help. And I know that is something that has to come when my mental energy is up. When I'm down, when it's depleted, it's harder for me, I know, to go to gratitude. I just get kind of bratty about that. I go, I'm not grateful. Yeah. But it really requires, after I've had the sleep and the rest and the good food, and that has to be planned in. So managing pain and stress in the holidays can really be extra challenging if we become mentally depleted. Dr. Morris says we can move from coping to suffering, from purposeful to erratic, from resolved to lax. Think about the weight gain that can occur in the holidays, because food can be a nurturing thing, but then too much of a good thing, then we start to feel bad about that. We can go to being from in control to overreactive, from goal focused to feeling easily set back, and really just plain drained, exhausted, misunderstood, and isolated. So I hope these 7 suggestions that came from my own and clients' experiences are helpful to those listening, reminders for those who've been through it, that they have navigated before and they will again. And just what other things might be helpful this year. If it's your second year, know that you're not alone. You're not the first person to go through this. There's a large community here for you. So if you would like to receive this list of tips and also a booklet from Dr. Morris Summers, it's a very sweet booklet, very easy to go through, where your mental energy goes and how to refill, please contact me.
And Esther, what's the best way to do that?
I am most easily at gatespassadvisors.com, and there's a contact me button there. And the email is Esther, ESTHER, at gatespassadvisors.com. Very, very happy to support you and help you through this time.
Absolutely. I know you always are. So thank you, Esther, so much for this. Great tips, great conversation, and very, very much needed. So I appreciate that. And of course, our last thank you always goes to you, listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Women in Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.